Live video starting. So it's really weird. I have three videos on my screen. So I have your
Okay.
end video, I have OBS to like make it look pretty, and then we have us being live. So it's
Okay.
like three delayed versions.
Got it.
All right, so we're live. Perfect. Let me just have. I'm gonna double check,
Okay.
and then we can get started. Let's see if anybody joins in the first few minutes. Looks good to me.
Okay.
So today, me and Brian are here to talk about how grants impact service-based businesses. I think you've seen Brian and myself in the previous live sessions we did, and every Tuesday we're planning on having a little bit of like a current event or current situation that we're considering for businesses discussion, and try to keep expanding our networking knowledge.
Yeah. With that being said, I we'd love to dive in and have a little bit of a conversation with you guys and try to educate you a little bit more on grants. This is something that I offer quite extensively and exclusively in my business, as well as a lot of stuff that Rex and I are teamed up on and projects we're working on together. So leave a comment below if a grant is something that you have explored previously in your own business, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit business that you have, or if it's something that you were potentially looking to explore, right? So leave a comment, just say grants, or something like that, or explore. If it is something that you're looking to do or have looked into before. Reason we're asking is because grants can be a fascinating way or a very effective way to secure additional funding for your business. Again, it doesn't matter if it's a for-profit or nonprofit. There's probably thousands of grants out there from my experience, from the research that we've done, that you may or may not qualify for, depending on your business initiatives, your overall business strategy, et cetera, et cetera. Um, there's a lot that goes into grants. They can be very finicky, very particular. And today, Rex and I would like to dive into maybe how feasible it would be to explore that grant writing route. And we're definitely going to touch on some hot button topics today that revolve around grants, specifically around things that could be happening if you live in America, where I'm at, and Rex lives in Malta. If you live where we live, especially in America, there's a lot of stuff that's happening with our current campaign, with the current political administration, that are significantly impacting grants for the better or the worse, right? Different DEI initiatives that are going away, grants being frozen, certain funds being eliminated or frozen or kind of up in the air. It seems things have been changing quite a bit over the last month or two, especially. And we've had to kind of stay abreast of that and stay on top of all that, because can't tell a client one thing and then have something change and then not relay that to them. So that's some of the stuff that we'll talk about today. I guess, Rex, where would you like to start first as far as maybe how to educate the audience there?
I think the first thing that we should talk about is why you should choose a grant. I think one of the big things about grants is if you do get selected, they're non-repayable funds. You have the ability to gain some, let's say insight or finances for a project without having to know that you have to pay interest back or their terms. I mean, please don't get me wrong, there are terms for all grants, milestones and things you have to reach, but this puts a lot less stress on the business owner, especially when you're starting off. And a lot of people think that grants are just for nonprofits, but they're really not. They're good for profitable businesses that are looking for growth and innovation and expansion. Even something like redeveloping your facility. In Malta, they do a lot of initiatives on greenification. Making your facilities and your premises more, environmentally friendly, and they offer grants like that. And
Yeah, and in oh, go ahead, go ahead.
good.
So in America, we have similar things where there might be grants available. If you're trying to make your facility more green or eco-friendly, there's also grants for specific business initiatives, right? If you're so one of the things that's huge in America is the idea of job creation. So if you're looking to use grant money specifically to create jobs in your local economy, right? Because you want to use that money to hire more people or do a renovation project, right? Or different things like that. There are different grants that are available for that. Again, whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit, there'll be very specific grants that are geared towards that. And grants, like Rex mentioned, you don't typically have to pay that money back. There's no interest that's attached with it. Um, I would never say it's quote unquote free money because they're depending on the size of the grant. There tends to be again a lot of loopholes and different things that you have to jump through. Every grant is very different. Again, if the grant is more substantial when it comes to how much funding they're providing, they will tend to ask for a lot more documentation, evidence of success at your business, proof of concept, financial documentation, business licensing.
Yeah.
It can be a lot. It can be a lot.
You
And
have to
so,
get into the technicals. You can't just
yeah,
expect that you're going to write, hey, government or hey, agency that is interested in my idea, I'd like some money. This is not generally how people hand out funds. You need to go in with a credible plan. You need to know, I mean, it sounds, a little bit intensive, but you should go as far as knowing who are the people evaluating your grant. Look at what they're interested in. What if you're looking at something local community? You can find local city center what is it? Where you're trying to restore the central, walking
rejuvenation
districts,
project. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
rejuvenation projects. The word
Yep.
lost me for the second there. Those grants are there for a reason. The city wants to see a certain aspect. If you come tell them you want to put a Tesla dealership there, they might say, hey, no, that's not what we're looking for in our rejuvenation. So always have to consider that in and then get down to the actual nitty gritty. If you're going to put a sign in that city, are there permits required to get that sign? It's not just the cost of the sign. You need to make sure that the budget that you create for those activities are really based on the realities of your business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if I can give the audience a quick tip, one thing that I've started to suggest to several of my clients is if that organization that you're wanting to apply to, apply for a grant to, some of these organizations, they post the previous winners of the grant, right? Most of us don't think about this. At least I didn't in the very early days either. But I've started suggesting to clients if you see previously posted winners, right? Look that person up or look that business up and see if you can find them on LinkedIn or find an email online or something and reach out to them. And don't feel weird about reaching out because you're looking to secure a grant that they clearly received. So they must have done something right, right? They must have done something correctly. They must have articulated their point clearly enough and checked all the boxes, so to speak, because there's probably a lot of other people that also applied for that grant.
Yep.
But this human being or this company was the one that was chosen or one of the few people that were chosen. Sometimes with grants, for some grants, they choose multiple winners, maybe 10, 20, 30, maybe more. Sometimes there's only one winner. Reach out to them, send them an email saying, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm also interested in applying for this XYZ grant. I saw that on the website, they mentioned that you were the winner last year or last month or whatever. I was just hoping you could help me and kind of provide me, some of the things that some of the reasons why you felt like you won or some of the things that maybe you felt like you did really well. Is it okay if we set up a quick call later this week to discuss? I really would love to secure some grant funding to do XYZ in my business. And I'm sure I can learn a lot from you, right?
Yeah.
Offer to pay that person for their time, right?
Yeah.
If they're willing to jump on an hour-long call for you, that's basically a consulting call that
Or
they're
if they're
taking away from their
local,
family.
offer to take them to lunch.
Yep, take them to lunch or buy them a coffee, take them to dinner, something. because in essence, they're taking the, now, if they respond and they say, yeah, actually, it's totally fine. You can pick my brain for an hour or whatever. Um, it's basically like they're doing a consulting call, right? So don't expect them to do that for free. They're taking that time away from their family, maybe their own business, their job, what have you, and they're trying to help you. So yes, do offer to do something for them to make it truly worth their time to help you. It can never hurt to pick someone's brain who won. And now, with that being said, I I would be remiss if I didn't mention some of the things that we've been dealing with and facing when it comes to grants, right? Especially over these last couple months with some of these policy changes and things that have been changing again in our economy and with our political administration here in the states where I live. So, one of the things maybe some of you have noticed, again, if you've looked at grants before in the past, or you will notice if you're going to be looking at grants here in the near future, is there have been a lot of policy changes. My recommendation is typically a couple of different types of grants. The two major ones in the states, from my experience, have been the federal grants, right? And then there's state provided grants or state funded grants
Or private foundations.
or private foundations, right? From my experience, what we've seen before the administration change went through, before Trump got in office, it was much more black and white and easy to understand when it came to which grants, when you do your research process, which grants you can actually qualify for, especially federal. Federal, it's usually very clear cut. Like, hey, here's a list of qualifications. If you meet all of these, feel free to apply. Here's the application link, or here's the packet of materials that we're going to be expecting you to submit. Good luck to you, right? And here's the deadline. And they would tell you, like, this application will get opened up on this date. The deadline is this date. So if you miss the deadline, basically you snooze, you lose. But it's very, very cut and dry. Like, not a lot of interpretation there. State funded grants, same thing. Private foundation grants, same thing. However, over the last couple months, because of all the policy changes, many of you will realize, if you haven't already, a lot of those federal grants that were supposed to be opened up for application back. So I've seen this. There were some that were supposed to be opened up at the end of February, end of March, middle of April. When you go to check out that grant, the apply button is disabled, or it gives all the information for the grant, but there's nowhere to actually open up an application or download the application form. Nothing. It's blocked.
Yep.
And so you're probably wondering, what the heck? Like, it said it's supposed to be open on this date, and I can't figure out how to apply to this thing. It's because typically the funds for that particular grant, especially because it's federal, have been frozen and under review, right? And so a lot of us don't know that because it doesn't state that a lot of times anywhere on the website. If you're looking on grants.gov or one of these other federal grant databases, it doesn't usually state that information. So I'm saying all this because I'm trying to save you the frustration and the wasted time that me and some of my team members have had to deal with, because when we see that we can't apply or potentially something's been frozen, we've emailed several different grants. Their main point of contact is typically on the website. They'll say, for questions about this grant or questions about the application process, email Debbie Jordan. Here's her email address. Okay, perfect. So you send Debbie an email. It takes a few days for her to respond. She finally responds. And when you say, hey, I'm trying to apply for this grant, can you tell me when it's going to be opened up? Can you tell me why I can't find the application link, or I can't find the downloadable PDF or whatever? Typically, you'll get a canned response from Debbie saying, I can't give too much information. Just pay attention to the website, and we'll make updates on there as needed.
No, and this
So,
is because there isn't any real viable direction on where they're going to go, and even
yep,
what is the policy on what type of grants they want to be funding. I mean,
yep,
they've gone as far as pulling funding on, let's say, inappropriated ideology, like where they misinterpreted what they thought the agenda was of the trial based on their agenda, and now the trial is pulled. And the unfortunate reality when you're talking about these type of grants, depending on what, even if you're in the financial industry or the medical industry or education, you have certain timelines, pipelines, milestones that you're trying to achieve. And if funding gets stopped in the middle, the project might be dead in the water. And this is
Yeah.
something that in years past wasn't something that we had to worry about with our clients, where they might have had a grant that's, a 5 year, 6 year milestone grant. And now in year four, they're worried that tomorrow the next set of funding won't come, or that the operational funding will be removed and only research specific funding and modifications to the plan will happen. Because a lot of people only look at funding as certain research and development. But this is not the only thing that you can get grants for. You can get grants for market expansion. You can get grants for operational growth, a little bit of working capital if for SMEs so that you can do expansion locally. We have a lot of those type of programs in Europe. You can do it for employment impact. I know that in Malta and in Europe, they have different types of grants for hiring different types of employees. So if you hire someone that you can upskill, you might get a discount on their salary. If you hire someone from a certain community or a certain type of special education, you can get additional funding. You have your compliance. In pharmaceuticals, we have our ISO standards. In the US and Europe, you have grants that will help you not only develop your ISO certification, also fund the completion of the certification. Now, one thing that I'd like to make clear that is often different between European and US grants is that European grants, especially ones targeted for SMEs, are often post-paid, which means you as the business person needs to invest the funds at first, and then you're going to submit that you've completed it. Of course, you've had received approval of the grant, and then the government will refund you those funds because they want to ensure that you completed your activity and you completed it successfully for these smaller compliance type things. And then it's always nice if you go to a private foundation and you can say that the Gates Foundation gave you a grant. This is something that's a credibility booster. You're looking at raising private funding, having someone like that in your pocket or a local celebrity, an influencer, always attracts a different type of grant funding. And as Brian was talking about, and we've been discussing the challenges, for me, I look at the current administration as a learning experience on how to start understanding that really grants are at the whim of the government. Even private grants, some private foundations are funded by government funding. So if they lose their funding, they also lose who they're giving out the grants to as well. So having a better understanding of where you want to target, maybe if you're a local business, yeah, it used to be smart to go for federal grants. Maybe you target local state grants instead or local private grants. That way you have a little bit more stability in what they would want for your local, community. But I also argue that, sometimes having a large firm with a big team and applying for multiple grants simultaneously, gives you that shotgun approach that you're hoping you get something, but it might not
Yeah.
be the most cost effective when,
Yeah.
each grant costs application fees, time and resources, and everything that you need to put in to try and actually be successful in getting that grant.
And I think a big part of it too is always keeping in mind, like I try to set reasonable expectations with all clients. We don't know how many other people are and have applied to this grant, right? A lot of time, pretty much every time, there's not a lot of transparency with these grants. The organizations don't come right out and say, "Hey, thanks, Brian, for submitting this application, or for having XYZ client of yours submit this application. You are in the database. You're in the line, so to speak. There's 565 other applicants. You're one of 321 applicants, or whatever. So you might be one of a few who have submitted that application or that proposal, or you might be one of hundreds or thousands. You don't know, and no one will tell you. No one will give you a straight answer, unfortunately. I always say it's kind of like applying for a job, right? You might have the world's greatest resume. You might be what you feel like is a perfect fit for this open position. You go through rounds and rounds of interviews. You do all this prep work, all this tweaking of your resume, cover letter, etc. Go through these rounds of interviews. You feel like, hey, this job is mine. I've done everything I could possibly do. And they end up going in a different direction. They end up going with some other candidate. and you have no idea what exactly you could have done better, because 9 times out of 10, nobody gives you that type of feedback. You just know, I didn't get the job, so I'm back to square one, right? I put in all this time, energy, and effort, and I still didn't get the job, even though I felt like I was a perfect fit. And you don't get much feedback on how to do better next time. So it can be frustrating, can be confusing there. Definitely helps to, again, work with professional grant writer or a team of grant writers that actually know what to look for, what best practices to practice to try to boost your chances of actually being one of the approved people, or one of the people chosen, as a winner of that grant. Otherwise, you really will be flying blind, I'll tell you, because even when I first got into this business, there was a lot of, unfortunately, misinformation and lack of transparency, again, with how things actually work and what you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to go to even find the proper information on grants for ones that you feel like you'd be a good fit for, etc. Um, and also to keep in mind, grant funding is indeed very much, and should always be viewed as a short-term funding operation, right? A short-term solution. Do not hinge your key initiatives or all
Yeah.
your next year's roadmap on, we're going to get this $50,000 in grants. I know we're going to get it, and when we get it, my God, everything's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Even if you get it, you have to think about next steps, right? When that money runs out, now what? Do you have private investors? Do you have any sort of cash reserves to help you through? We've talked about some earlier episodes. What does your sales and marketing strategy look like, right? How has revenue been actually performing? What's going out there in the world with your clientele? You need to actually have answers for that, and not just put all your hopes and dreams on this Hail Mary, quote unquote, or this one play that you're going to call, which is grant funding.
Yeah.
So just being conscientious of them, being realistic, and just tampering
I like that you
expectations, or
said the
tampering
word
expectations.
realistic, because
Mm-hmm.
one of the things is being realistic with what types of grants you can actually apply for and get. You know, I'm sure there's lots of $1 million grants, but your
Sure.
business might not be qualified for that $1 million grant. So spending the time and effort in developing that $1 million grant might not be as effective as you think. And this is something that our clients are often looking for, let's say, the most money. And I'm not saying that they're trying to get more than they need, but they're looking to make sure that they get enough for their idea. And sometimes that's not what the grant is for. Sometimes the grant is for flexibility, sometimes the grant is for productivity. And this is where, having a good team or people to shoot off of will definitely help you make a better decision. Because in Europe, we have a lot of collaborative grants where if you team up with companies in and outside of Europe, you can get a whole new batch of grants available to you because you're doing collaboration. Now, this could be in healthcare, IT, automotive. There's tons of sectors that are, let's say hot topics right now. I wouldn't say studying the corpse flower is going to get you any grants, but if you look into regenerative farming, things like this, these are all places where you can take your business and move it forward with a lot of funding. I know that we talked about what's available. We're not talking about hundreds of thousands. There's billions of dollars of funding available across the world, whether it's the US or Europe. It's just up to you as the business owner to see, will it help my business, and how can I get it so that the regulators or the authorities that are going to approve it are going to be, let's say, at least giving you a fair chance. Nobody can guarantee a grant, but give you that fair shake. And a couple things that we always tell them, and we tell our clients, is storytelling is key. When you frame your grant, and I'm not talking about, Jack and Jill walk up the hill type storytelling, but understanding your audience and the type of grant you're going into. If you're applying for a healthcare grant at a research facility, this should be written differently than if you're writing a grant to get you funding to start a, children's youth league. So this is something that a lot of times that you need to make sure that you're framing everything correctly so that you have the best chance of getting that grant. And of course, grant funding is always nice because it can help you propel to that next level, that next stage without burden of loans or personal income. When you're a solopreneur or a small startup, a lot of times you're putting in sweat equity and whatever money you can scrounge up when you're not working on your business. So grants is something that we always push. In Europe, we have something called Horizon Europe, and then in each country itself, we have localized grants. We in certain countries, you'll even have specific countries partnerships. So in Malta, we have different grants that are specific for Maltese and Turkish companies, and Maltese and Chinese companies, and Maltese and U.S. companies. So leveraging yourself with maybe an international partner in what you do might open some grants to you as well. So this is one of the things that when we started Entrepreneur's Element, the idea of networking we thought was key, because the more people we can bring together, the more knowledge we can share with one another. And maybe there are people in similar niches in different continents, in different countries, where they can collaborate with one another and maybe get a grant to do something together and push an initiative forward or push a type of business growth or even open a new market. You know, grants are not easy money, but I think that it's something that a successful entrepreneur can use to their benefit.
Yeah, and always focus on, if you're going to be applying to grants, focus on innovation, obviously how your business is innovative, the type of impact that you plan on making on your community, and sustainability. Keep all those things in mind when you're applying. Um, Definitely, if you have any experience applying to grants, if you've won any grants, please share that in our Entrepreneurs Element Facebook community. I'm sure a lot of people can benefit from your knowledge or your experiences. Um, if you're interested in applying to grants in the near future, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Leave a comment below saying something like grant writing, just so I'll know to reach out to you, or you can again reach out to us as well. We'd love to help you. We'd love to kind of educate you and train you on this whole grant writing process. And if it makes sense to collaborate and work together, we'd be happy to do so and help you try to get some grant money that way. And a friendly reminder that I will be doing our upcoming Facebook Live training this upcoming Monday. I believe it's at 11 a.m. Eastern time, if I'm
Yep,
not
11
mistaken.
a.m. Eastern.
Perfect. So we're going to be in that one. It's going to be very, very interesting and unfortunately very relevant topic to a lot of us because we've had this experience. I'm going to be talking at length about how to spot a scammer or a fraudulent coach. For those of us that have unfortunately have had that type of experience or gotten advantage of by someone we thought was credible and legit and very good at what they do, only to get taken advantage of them. I'm going to be calling out some of the signs and red flags and things to look for, things that I've unfortunately learned the hard way as well, but also have learned with my experience of kind of potentially what to spot as far as who I wouldn't trust to work with me, or doesn't someone that doesn't truly have integrity. So that'll be a good one.
Sounds
Be
like
sure
it's
to
going to be an
tune in.
interesting one. Make sure
Yeah.
you join us on Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Share and invite your friends to join the network so that we can get wider and share more knowledge with one another. And we'll see you again next week on Monday for Brian's live session.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
See you.